This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So if you own or run your own online business, have you considered selling your site, your store, your tech, or your app? Well, with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers, and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper makes selling your online business simple. So to get a free valuation, simply visit flipper.com/techtalks. Each month, thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, to learn more, visit flipper.com/techtalks. Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, a place where we demystify complex technologies every day and provide real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping entire industries. But we do all this in a language that everyone can understand. And first of all, I want to give a very special thank you to Terry Spall, chairman of CleanBus Limited. He sent me a quick direct message saying he loved the interview with Partyka with Ben, but there was a slight editing issue at the beginning where myself and the guest were talking over each other. Now, thanks to Terry, I've been able to re-edit and replace the file, so hopefully I did get to it before most of you listen. But if you ever notice anything like that, please send me a direct message on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. at Neil C. Hughes, or just email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, because I currently record 10 to 15 interviews a week, and I edit everything myself. So if I do make the occasional mistake because I'm spreading myself too thinly, I really would appreciate your extra ears. So please just send me a quick message. And I know some of you will say, Neil, what, you set up these interviews yourself? You record them and edit them yourself? Why don't you outsource that stuff? And the reality is I would need a small mortgage to pay someone to edit 50 interviews a month. It's much easier to outsource if you've got 4, 5, 6, 7 or even 8 a month. But when you start talking 50 interviews a month, it gets quite expensive. So everything that you see and hear is all my responsibility. There ain't no little team helping me out here. But on with today's show. And today I want to demystify the world of statistical analysis, forecasting technology, and how data can be utilised by wider teams to create better business products. And that is what it's all about. So to do that, I've invited Jeffrey Partyka from Xactly on the podcast. He's going to join me in a conversation about all this and much more. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Denver, Colorado, where Jeffrey's waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Jeff Partyka. I've been a principal data science engineer at Xactly for nearly 2.5 years now. I've built machine learning models related to sales forecasting, churn prediction, and cross-selling, and also conducted some statistical analyses as well, including a study about the Great Resignation. I've actually been involved in data science for about 15 years and worked in a number of roles that were actually data science before the term became popular, in the geospatial domain, big data. Worked with a psychometrics group, did some research-oriented work at a work optimization startup, and had a stint as an adjunct professor at UTD, my alma mater, teaching a graduate-level computer science class. And then for fun, I enjoy reading pretty much everything, but especially about science and technology. I'm a big sports guy, and I'm very much into music, movies, and bar trivia.
Fantastic. And I'd love to take you back in time. Can you remember where your passion for science and technology came from, how those worlds collided and put you on this path that you're on right now? Or ultimately, what was your origin story?
I love that origin story. I love the question, Neil. That's great. I think about this sometimes. What were some of the key formative moments that kind of got me on the path that I'm on today? And I always go back to the moment where my 12-year-old brain got the basic idea of computer programming, at least at a high level. And it was actually my older brother, Dave, who was the inspiration. I was in 7th grade. He was in 9th grade. So his first year of high school, he was taking a computer programming class, and he wanted to show, we were both home after school, and he was just wanted to show his homework to me. So I went upstairs and looked. And now keep in mind, this is the early 90s. So giant oversized monitors, giant computers, that kind of thing. And I look at the screen and all I see is like just like a lot of blue and gray and English words that seemed like broken but understandable. It turns out I was looking at an editor for an old programming language called QBasic that was taught back in the day, decades ago, to students to help learn to help teach the intuition of programming. And I studied the code that my brother wrote, and I noticed that it was in English and that I was able to generally understand what he was doing, almost like mad. It was crazy, almost like magic. I didn't understand everything, but I got the basic idea of it. And I was able to translate it very well to conversational English. And so that already registered so well. And then the last thing is my brother then talked about that thing that really blew my mind as a 12-year-old was he then talked about the programming construct, if then else, if a condition is true, do this, else do that. And, very absolutely essential construct. And I learned about it at that moment for the first time, and my mind was blown. And the first thought I had was, wow, if I write a million if statements, I could build my own role-playing game.
I love it.
And that's my origin story. That's how it all got started.
And I've got to ask, what happened to Dave? Is Dave still into computing, technology, etc.?
Oh, Dave has had an incredible career. He actually went into chemistry and got a PhD from Harvard doing that. And he's actually now more recently kind of integrated, went back to computer science and integrated that into his plethora of skills as well. So Dave's just a multi-talented, amazing guy.
Oh, I love it. And of course, it was that path that would lead you to Xactly. And I remember speaking with Chris Cabria, I think it was about 4 years ago now. We'll have many new listeners from that interview. So can you tell me a little bit more about the company and remind everyone listening about the problems that you set out to solve with technology?
Oh, I'd love to, Neil. Absolutely. So simply put, Xactly helps sales reps hit their number. Yeah. Now, it's tough enough to do this in a normal sales climate. Sales reps have a lot of responsibilities and have to have just a multitude of skills. They have to be a charismatic speaker. They have to do countless hours of research on multiple companies, build relationships with key folks, and basically just serve the customer with a top-notch experience in a way that best suits them. So take all that, which is a lot, and then imagine the craziness of the year 2022 and all the uncertainty that's happened this year. I mean, whether we're talking geopolitics, the economy, the rough year the tech industry's had in general, the list goes on. Now, Xactly provides a bevy of tools for sales reps, from compensation plan creation and management to territory planning to capacity and quota planning to my specialty, sales forecasting, and well beyond that. We are a leader in the intelligent revenue space and are sitting on, get this, 17 plus years of data. A lot of data we're sitting on. Whoa. We use this data it's a lot. And we use this data, unsurprisingly, to power various applications of machine learning, everything from sales performance management and particularly forecasting. Last thing I'll talk about is that we've got a lot of experience doing this. We are not a fly-by-night operation. We've been around since 2005. Have helped over 1,200 customers in 130 countries and millions of sellers around the world beat their revenue targets. So very proud to work for such a great company.
And just to set the scene for today's conversation, can you tell me a little bit more about the importance of statistical analysis? I know it's a topic very close to your heart, so a little bit more about the importance of that, and also how data can be utilized by wider teams to create better business products, because I think there's so many different businesses out there, and we've all seen what happens when everyone's working in silos with different sets of data, etc. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Oh, I would love to, Neil. It is a topic dear to my heart and a fascinating one, always. And it's not always easy to whittle down, but let's start with a basic definition of statistical analysis, right? Yeah. So it's the use of statistical methods and models on data sets to extract insights and information that can provide value. If we're working in a corporate context, this would be business value. If it's an academic context, really just a value and understanding the data better and the problem better is really also equally important. And the insights could be anything from identifying a trend, for example, like an uptick in sales wins in a given quarter for a sales forecasting problem, or, could a trend, the insight could be a summarization of a data set, like maybe like a box plot indicating the tenure, how long vice presidents of sales have been in position across a variety of companies in the year 2021, as another example. And then a third one might be what's called customer segmentation model. So companies want to understand what kind of users or customers buy a given product. So what they'll do is they'll divide those customers into different groups, or sometimes called clusters, where each of those users in the same cluster have shared characteristics of, that are very important. And then seeing and identifying all these clusters allows companies to break down the different types of companies can then use this to break down the different types of customers that they have. One more related question I'll ask to this is, what is data science? and how does this relate to statistical analysis? And this is a bit of an infamous question because even though data science is wildly popular, there still remains a lot of confusion about what it is. There are a lot of smart people, maybe they chose to go in sales or marketing or engineering, and they want to learn more about data science, and they try reading about it, and they get flustered because they find all these contradictory definitions as to what it is. And so after a number of years doing data science work, the best way I could break it down simply is that data science is the use of tech skills and math to derive value out of data. That's really all it is, in a straightforward way. And then the term data science and statistical analysis there's a lot of overlap. They constitute a lot of the same things, but I would say that data science is a little more oriented towards predictive analytics, making predictions of the future, and a little more. But I would say, and I would say that data science stresses machine learning a little more, although you can have that in statistical modeling or analysis as well, but it's traditionally, you tend to see it a bit more in data science.
For people that are listening outside of this space, how do forecasting models work? Because I think over the last few years, we've all seen many forecasting models, whether it be around elections or pandemics, etc. Maybe a lot of people have been scratching their head thinking, well, how does this actually work? So can you tell me a little bit more about that too?
Oh, I would love to. And absolutely. I mean, there's really been a veritable explosion of forecasting models. Yeah. I mean, it used to be more of like a niche thing, even maybe like 10, 15 years ago. And now it's really in the mainstream. I mean, we see it every day pretty much. Yeah. And so forecasting models work in a variety of ways, and it depends upon the exact purpose of that model. I'll give two examples. First example I'll give is, and I will talk about the sales forecasting model that my team has built within our Xactly forecasting application. And so to talk at a bit of more of an intuitive level, we use machine learning to solve two basic problems. One, will a given sales opportunity in the sales pipeline be a win or a loss? Because I mean, it's going to be one of those two results, a win or a loss for a given sales opportunity. Number two, how much revenue can we expect from opportunities not yet in the sales pipeline from a given point in the quarter, let's say today, until the end of the quarter? Oftentimes customers want to know, okay, well, we're midway through the quarter. We know we have all these opportunities in our pipeline we've identified, but we want to know how much more revenue we can expect from opportunities that not yet enter our sales pipeline. So that's a very common use case for customers as well. I'm very proud to say that after a lot of hard work in our company and on our team, we've solved these problems. And it's really because we really rely on that 17 plus years of data that I mentioned earlier. To give a very high level description, we train our models on some of that data to find patterns that correspond to wins and losses. And now let's keep in mind what machine learning really is. There's a lot of terminology. It's very easy to get confused by the math and the terminology, but what it really is at its core, it's a sophisticated pattern matcher that finds patterns that humans often can't, right? So we use a variety of methods to then determine the most important data for the model to use as the basis for its predictions. And then a couple more points I'll make here is one might think, okay, well, once the model makes predictions, we're done, right? Our job is done. We can go on a hammock and put our feet up in the air. No, we can't. Not even close. Not even close. And that's because users have increasing expectations. In particular, they want to understand why the model made the predictions that it did. They want to understand what were the most influential factors in a given model prediction. So this is what's called in-the-field explainability, and it's one of the most active areas of work in machine learning. So we provide explainability information to users that illustrate in a straightforward way that doesn't require any technical background. That's very important. Why the model predicted a win for a given deal or a loss for another. And I'll provide one more brief example of a forecasting model, which gives some more insight into how they work. I want to talk about our commission earnings forecasting model. So one of the big things about this, and one of the big benefits of having a model like this, is that it automates a lot of the manual work typically involved. And by automating a lot of the work, that reduces error, and it reduces financial risk, especially in the case of commissions earnings forecasting, especially when it comes to unexpected commission expenses, which can happen a lot.
Yeah.
And one really important aspect about this is that organizationally, it helps bring together finance and sales teams so that more information is known by both parties at the same time, instead of, for example, finance being blindsided by a sudden new expense that they just learned about 5 minutes ago, right? So those are two examples of forecasting models, and I hope that was an enlightening overview.
Yeah, it really was. And like you said, a few years ago, it was considered a very niche area. And I'm curious, how has this role evolved in recent years now that it's better institutionalized? Because you must have seen so many big changes over the last few years.
Oh, I certainly have. And the short answer is a lot.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll expand upon that. So since I began delving into data science, even in its more prototypical forms back in the aughts, the 2000s, a lot has changed. And I would say, to really condense it, though, and get the brass tacks, expectations are higher when it comes from customers. Expectations are higher when it comes to deliverables and evangelization, or the ability to communicate with a wider variety of different customers and different kinds of audiences. Now, previously, I remember back in the day, back when I first started doing this kind of work, the big expectation for data scientists, in my experience, was just to build the model, some kind of machine learning statistical model. If you can get the accuracy as high as possible, that was even better. But honestly, for many companies, that alone was enough to satisfy stakeholders. Never mind explainability and causation and transmitting to user customers why a model prediction was made. And I think the reason why it was enough to build a model at that point was because it was considered almost downright futuristic, like it was cutting edge. And then companies could use that almost as a branding mechanism to say, we're at the forefront of the technology. We're using AI and machine learning. And not every company was. Now, over time, customers came to their senses, and rightfully so. But they started asking questions like, okay, well, we spent all this money buying this model, and we're getting these predictions, which is great. But how do we really know that those predictions are A, correct, and B, that they're being based on factors which are sensible and pragmatic? And so this resulted, and this started happening really in the early 2010s, and then you really start seeing in the second half of the 2010s an influx of explainability frameworks showcasing the influence of model predictors. And even to this day, it seems like every year there's like literally hundreds of new ones coming out all the time. But because you have increased framework, increased tooling, all these new frameworks, there's more technology. This is where that evangelist responsibility starts to come into play, where a data scientist needs to be very good at communicating to many different kinds of audiences, not just technical audiences. I would even say more often than not, audiences which are non-technical but have a strong business understanding.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was looking at your sales talent and the Great Resignation report that you referenced at the beginning of our conversation. So can you give me a bit of an overview of that report? And most importantly of all, what did you learn? And were there any big key takeaways from that report? Because again, big talking points, right?
Absolutely. I would love to give an overview. It was a fascinating report. So Xactly commissioned a survey of over 400 sales leaders to understand the impact of the Great Resignation and the effect it's having on organizations. And for any listeners who are not familiar with the term, the Great Resignation is an ongoing economic trend in which employees have voluntarily resigned for their jobs en masse, and for different reasons, often for to change their careers, to try a new career path, or just to try something new in their life. It was really a period of reflection after COVID, and it translated into the workplace. And so the key findings of the report that I saw were, one, that sales leaders now commonly change jobs. And we're talking about sales leaders, not just sales reps, but sales leaders. They commonly change jobs and even industries every 2 years. And in the survey, 50% of sales leaders changed jobs in the past 2 years, which is incredible to me. Not so much, and I'll get to this maybe a bit later in my answer, but the number itself is very surprising to me. Another key finding was that sales employees want to do work they believe in, and that impacts the greater good. And this really flies in the face of a lot of negative and just false stereotypes about salespeople being, greedy and not always being forthcoming with the truth. And this survey flies in the face of that. And then one more finding I'll talk about is that, and this is very important as well, compensation is not the only or even the most important factor in attracting and retaining sales talent. And that we should look at other factors like how good is the management of the company? What's the company culture like? Is it possible to have any kind of feasible work-life balance? And is there a career path for me? Because obviously nobody wants to be stuck in a dead-end job. Everyone wants to have room for growth. So I think those are some of the key points that I was able to extract from the report.
And you mentioned there the 50% of people that, or leaders that are changing roles there. Was there anything else that surprised you in the report? Because I would imagine you're very close to this space and you've probably seen it all before. So was there anything else in there that surprised you?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway for me, it wasn't so. I mean, those points were surprising, especially since we were talking about sales leaders and not just sales reps.
Yeah.
But I would also say too, it was the numbers, the magnitude of these trends, which really surprised me. And then, again, just to reiterate, the majority of sales leaders are open to leaving their job for one that offers more purpose or value to society. This directly rejects the stereotypes about salespeople. I mean. And for the record, even though it's anecdotal, every salesperson I've ever known, I found that they tend to give their whole selves to their career, their whole selves to their company. And I relate to that very strongly because I've always done the same thing. So, and then I guess to further support this point, one last thing that really surprised me is that the report also found that 2/3 of sales leaders will leave their job for another that provides more purpose or value to society, really emphasizing that compensation is not necessarily king, that in order to attract top talent, we have to look at an entire employee experience and a wide variety of factors.
And obviously we're recording this in December, so January is just around the corner. Is there anything you can share about what you're going to be focusing on Xactly in 2023?
Oh, sure, Neil. So in terms of, I guess, what's next for Xactly as a company as a whole, I'll leave that to our CEO, Chris Cabrera. He's in a better position to answer that. But yeah. Clearly, but I can talk more about what's next in regards to our sales forecasting models at a high level. We'll be supporting many more customers than we currently do, which we're in a position to pull off because we've designed our models with scalability in mind. In fact, we're Xactly Japan, which has only been around for a few months, signed 4 deals in the last month. So they've had a pretty much immediate success at hitting the ground running, which we're very excited about. And that's really from a customer standpoint, but then also we'll continue to not only make our model predictions more accurate than ever, no surprise there, but we'll provide additional explainability information that gives our customers even more insight into how our models make predictions. And then I'll add a couple more points here. We're looking to provide support for split opportunities, calculating something I like to call calculating past the projection. Basically, how many different ways can a team or rep make their number for a quarter? And then finally, we're going to develop more sophisticated efforts to consider the current sales climate when making predictions. That's especially relevant in 2022, where you might the model might look at every other variable that we consider and say, okay, this looks like a surefire win. But then if we're in a recession, let's say, or the sales climate is maybe a little stagnant, then that could change the whole equation. So we're coming up with better and better ways to measure that. So in summary, our models will be more accurate, more explanatory, more scalable, and just plain better.
Love that. And I can't thank you enough for joining me on the podcast today. And before I let you go, though, we are right in the heart of the holiday season, and you started the podcast talking about your origin story. So I'm now going to ask you, what was the soundtrack to that origin story? Is there a song you can add to our Spotify playlist, or maybe a book that is important to you that you'd recommend that we can add to our Amazon wish list? All I ask is, what are you going to leave us with and why?
Oh, it's such a fun question, Neil. And it's actually very difficult. It's fun and challenging for me because I'm very much into music, and it's hard to whittle down like my giant sort of musical database down to like a select few songs. But so I'm going to choose one of my favorite songs. It's not quite the most well-known song, or even genre. I'm a big fan of 70s progressive rock, and so this is a genre that sought to elevate the artistry of rock music. And there's there's so many hidden gems and great bands in the genre. It didn't really catch on as much in the USA, but I love it personally. One of my all-time favorites is by a group called Genesis. They're a very well-known group. They're more well-known for their 80s pop phase, which I also love too. They were more of an art rock band or a progressive rock band in the 70s. And they did a song during that time period called, and it's a little difficult to pronounce, but it's called Firth of Fifth. So, and first, like FIRTH of fifth. And so the title of the song is a pun on a river in Scotland known as the Firth of Forth. So the band got silly and named the song Firth of Fifth as next in line. And it's a gorgeous, beautiful, and inspiring song that fuses classical music and rock very well. And the lyrics describe a journey through life via the analogy of a winding river.
Wow, what a great choice. That was the Peter Gabriel years, right?
Those were the Peter Gabriel years, yes. And I've been listening to Genesis, the Peter Gabriel years for 20, going on 20 years now.
Fantastic. Well, I'll get that added straight to the Spotify playlist. And before I let you go, though, for anyone just wanting to find out more information about the reports we referenced today or finding out more information about Xactly, what's the best starting point?
So I think if you want to learn more about Xactly, I mean, we obviously we have a website, and I can give you a few more links. Sure. Xactly has a LinkedIn, of course, which is just look for Xactly-corporation. So it would be www.linkedin.com/company/Xactly-corporation. There's also, and I should reiterate Xactly's website, which is www.xactlycorp.com. So that's exactlycorp.com. And then you can look at Chris Cabrera's LinkedIn, obviously. And then you could also look at my LinkedIn if you want to really get deep into machine learning and data science. And then just under Jeffrey Partyka.
Awesome. Well, I'll get all those links added to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. Love chatting with you today. So much we covered in a short amount of time there. And I think you've done a great job of giving a great overview in a language that everyone can understand. We all hear about data science and forecast models and statistical analysis, but just to take a deep dive in a language everyone can understand, priceless. So thank you so much for sharing that and your origin story and even leaving us with a great tune. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Hopefully you've learned a few things today about how forecasting models work. I know I certainly have, along with the importance of statistical analysis and the role that technology plays in all that. But as always, if you've got anything you'd like to add to today's conversation, email as always, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. I mean, all the usual places are nice and easy to find. So today was all about statistical analysis, data, etc. But tomorrow we've got another subject to explore together. So hopefully you will join me again then. So a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.